All right. So let's go ahead and get started then. So again, my name is Dave Wilton. I'm the Professional Development Manager here at Facing the Future, and I'm joined today by Naomi Harper. Naomi, welcome and thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. I'm glad to be here.
So up on your screen there you can see a fabulous picture of Naomi and a little bit about what she does at Will Rogers Middle School. And Naomi, I'm just curious, tell me about that picture.
The picture is our little positive scarecrow. One of my students asked about having a scarecrow in the garden. We're into October, the harvest season, and that picture was taken today, and I asked a media student to do it, and I included it in. So on an everyday basis or on a regular basis, you can catch me with the scarecrow or doing some of our other activities.
That's great. Well, thanks to you and your students for giving us that picture. So you teach science at Will Rogers Middle School, and how long have you taught there, Naomi?
This time I'm going on my 11th year, but I began in the 70s and 80s and took a hiatus to raise my 4 children for about a 9-year period, and then was established myself as a teacher, and I came back to Will Rogers. So much of what we're going to talk about has occurred over the last 10 years.
Okay, great. Well, you've got a long history to draw from there. And there is, Naomi, your contact info is there, as well as your webpage. If folks are interested in kind of learning more about what you do, and I love that you have a whole sustainability subpage on your teacher page. That's always fun to see. So let's a little bit more about what we're going to do today. We're going to be talking about what Naomi is doing at Will Rogers Middle School, and Will Rogers has about 500 students. It's grades 6 through 8, and you're in Fair Oaks, which is kind of sandwiched between Lake Folsom and Sacramento. Am I correct?
Correct. Correct.
And tell me about, you all are an Energy Star school. What did that mean for you as teachers and students to do that?
Well, actually, we have become an Energy Star school for the second time. And it's based, even though our school building is 1965, our behaviors warranted the EPA award, and we were like one of the first schools in 2010, but then there are about 50 schools in San Juan that earned it in 2012, and it has much to do with the practices of keeping our doors closed, teaching with half light, and our energy efficiency on our air conditioning, all of these kinds of things. But I attribute it mostly to the student behavior and teacher behavior in reducing our energy usage.
All right. And is that something that was able to come about because of things you were doing in the classroom, or was this a separate kind of out-of-classroom effort?
No, this is school-wide. It's very much school-wide, and reminds me I should have included this one slide. We had a huge celebration. In fact, our site was the celebratory site for the other schools, and we had a nice coming together with teachers and district leaders, because we also celebrated something that we received from our public utility, which is called a Sunflower, which is a $20,000 install of a tracking device, solar tracking device, and they also combined that with 8 new buses that were running on gas. Help me with that. What I'm
Oh, natural gas.
Natural gas, and so it was a huge celebration, and they hosted it at our site because we are recognized in the district as being very proactive in our behaviors.
Yeah, no, it's been a pleasure to work with you and find out all the things that you're all doing at Will Rogers. So today we're going to be talking about what Naomi has been doing at her school with her students and the fellow staff members. So we're going to talk about a couple different things. One is a sustainability courtyard that they have there, and we'll talk a little bit about kind of curriculum that Naomi has used from Facing the Future and other groups that links to what she does at the school. Naomi's going to share with us a little bit about how she's incorporated service learning and the differences between service and service learning, and we're going to move on and talk about a stormwater project that she's done, and also a little bit of information from Naomi about grant writing, because a lot of what you've done, Naomi, as I understand, has been funded because of grants that you or someone else at your school or district has written. And along the way, if anybody has questions, you can type them in at any point in time in the question box there on the pane on the right-hand side of your screen. If there are questions that are too long, we may just save them and answer them at the end, or I can get back to folks individually via email, or you can contact me, and I'll have our contact information at the end of this as well. Along with that, I'm not going to delve too much more into the mechanics of webinars because I've found in this day and age most people have spent a lot of time with them. So I kind of want to shift gears for a sec and just ask you two questions as a group that you can just ponder and think about and kind of set the stage for where we're at. So this first question, in 50 years, I think the world will be. And I'd like you just to think about that from the perception of you as an adult teacher, and then also think about how your students might answer that. And how that answer to that question might change depending upon the age of students that you're working with, and maybe even the subject you're working in. And then shift gears a little bit and think about this question instead. In 50 years, I want the world to be. And I like to ask that question after the second one because I think, one, it gives just two different ways of thinking about what we're working towards as individuals, but also all of us as educators and working with students who are going to be the stewards and leaders and citizens of tomorrow, and helping them think about they really can be the architects of the world they want. And that's something that we strive to do here at Face in the Future, and I hope that in the time that we have talking with Naomi today, we'll get a sense of what her students have done around this goal, around this idea. And lastly, I want to share with you this quote from Paul Hawken. He gave this at a commencement speech a couple of years ago out here at the University of Portland in Oregon. And I like it because it captures, I think, some of the challenge and perhaps the pessimism of the first question of thinking how the world might be, but also some of the hope of thinking about how we want the world to be. And you can read more of that, I think, on his website. I believe it is still posted there. So that's kind of the overall tenor, I would say, for the work that we do here at Face in the Future is supporting educators such as you all who joined us here today, or folks who are watching this after the fact, in incorporating the kind of the lens of sustainability and looking at different global issues and their interconnections, and doing that through curriculum resources, through professional development, through webinars like this, or going to conferences that Naomi has presented at, or other peer educators have presented at, and sharing that with teachers around the country and around the world. So as you can see there, we are a nonprofit. We're based here in Seattle, Washington. We were founded in 1995 and have grown to reach all 50 states and over 120 countries. We reach at least about 1.5 million students every year with our programming through the free resources we have on our website, or the teacher's guides and student textbooks and curriculum resource or curriculum units that we offer on our site as well. So we do this by offering a large array of supplemental curriculum that can be used by educators in classrooms around the country. It's correlated with the Common Core standards for math and literacy language arts, as well as other standards for all 50 states. And we have a tool on our website that will show you in a little bit that you can use that to look up standards correlations for your state for particular subject areas. What I'd like to do now is pause and just see who is here. So I'm going to ask everybody a question here about the general age group that you work with. And that should be popping up on your screen, and you can go ahead and answer that. So just wondering, what's the primary grade or age group that you work with? Are you working with kind of pre-K through 5 and general elementary grades? Are you more middle school, grades 6 through 8, working in the high schools? Or are you post-grad, working in college, university, or are you working with a diverse array of all ages? So it looks like almost everybody has answered. So I'm going to go ahead and close this out and share it with everybody, and we'll get a sense of who's here. So it's pretty even mix, it looks like. A lot of folks in elementary grades, which is great to see, and then kind of a pretty even split otherwise. Some folks, it looks like, are working across grades because you could check multiple boxes there. So I appreciate you all for sharing that with us. And I'm going to hide this now, and we're going to move on to the next screen here, which is one of the things I talked about was that kind of interconnection between global issues and sustainability, and I like to show this graphic just to kind of get a sense of how we view the interconnection between global issues and how we want to support educators in teaching about, with the idea that global issues in some sense can be viewed as a system, and a mobile is a great example of a system, because as we know, the system of a mobile has to change if things get added or subtracted or moved, get heavier or lighter. And so you can think about that interconnected system as having also a set of feedback loops that can be viewed positively and negatively. And if you choose, like Naomi and her students have, to pick particular issues to work on, you can think of those as leverage points, and that can have positive impacts kind of rippling back throughout the system. And that's not to say that, by working in one area we're going to, solve all the world's problems, but it gets back to, supporting students and empowering them to think about creating a world that they want by taking action on a real issue in their community or one that's connected to their community because they're learning about it. The other piece I just wanted to briefly share with folks, and I realize most people, if you're already tuned in, are probably familiar with this definition, but I always like to share it just so I kind of have a sense of the group of what our common definition is. So this is one that we tend to use in our work a lot. It's relatively succinct, and it's one that's been kind of agreed to internationally. It's a relatively recent definition. I think folks would agree that throughout time and throughout space, there are cultures, countries, communities that have had their own definitions of sustainability. A lot of us in North America are familiar with the Iroquois Confederacy's concept of planning for the seventh generation. So it's by no means a new idea, but it's heartening to think that there is at least a growing global and national recognition that we want future generations to be able to do and have access to the same opportunities that we've had here in the past and present. And lastly, this little Venn diagram I like to share as just a way of illustrating what sustainability can be envisioned as looking like, the idea of balancing those three spheres of environment, economy, and society. And as we all know, the reality of that is it's not quite as cut and dried, but the overall goal of when we're learning about the concept of sustainability or asking students to determine if something is sustainable or not is to think about how each of those three spheres is affected and how they can think about working on those to ideally get something that's kind of right there in that sweet spot where all three of those spheres come together. So the title of this series was, integrating sustainability, engaging students, and supporting achievement. And so along the way, Naomi and I will be talking about how she's gotten this overall topic of sustainability into her curriculum, and what about sustainability and its interconnected issues helps her engage her students, and how this kind of teaching helps her support student achievement. And I mean that kind of in the classic sense I think a lot of us might be used to, but also in the idea that this can prepare students for the world of also standardized testing that we are working in these days, especially as the Common Core standardized assessments come along. So to that degree, I want to ask one more poll question here just to get a sense of who else is in the audience, which is talking about just kind of what fields are we working in. And that should be popping up on your screens there. And again, you can click multiples on those if you want to, but just to give Naomi and me a sense of who's in the audience and where your interest level might be. So if you can give us a sense of who you are, that would be great. And it looks like almost everybody's answered those, so great. So I'm going to go ahead and close this out and share it with everybody here. And interesting to see, so we've got a fair amount of folks working in the world of STEM, and a good number also who are doing a little bit of everything, always fun to see. So thanks everybody for telling us about that. It's always helpful for us as presenters to just kind of know who is in the audience. And Naomi, with you being a science teacher, I think it's also great to know that there's a good number of folks who are working in the sciences there. So I'm going to hand things over to Naomi, and she is going to talk more about what she's doing at Will Rogers Middle School and start off by talking about her sustainability courtyard that she and her students and staff members have created. So Naomi, I'll hand it off to you and tell us what we're looking at here, please.
All right. I wanted to touch on a few items while you're looking at the pictures that were mentioned. When I looked at that globe from a previous slide, I was reminded of the same size globe that we had shared with the students in a small school in Uganda. And I'll make that connection later in the presentation. I also wanted to say on this idea of architect, that each one of us is an architect of our own teaching, and that as you see the panorama on the bottom, that's a result of the past 10 years of seeing a courtyard that was plain and the grass was not watered, and I just couldn't abide by that. And so what you're seeing is 10 years of transforming a courtyard into what I have called depending on the funding stream, and I think you can appreciate that. One time it was a solar energy education demonstration courtyard, but I've gone beyond that, or our school's gone beyond that. Now it's a sustainability courtyard. And you can see in those pictures the water catchment. On the left there is a cob bench, kiosk. What you're not seeing is where the 4 green poles are. On top of that is our structure for our solar panels, which will be being installed later this year as a result of the grant. And then over on the right is one of our garden areas. And these were just since school started. The students who are doing the solar cooking demonstration, the point of having a courtyard is taking the class concepts out into the courtyard. It makes it that much more fun to teach. The other thing is I look at being an architect, going back to what's the world going to be like in 50? If the students don't have a vision or understand what strategies or techniques then they don't really have a concept of what their world will be like in 50 years. And so I think this courtyard more or less demonstrates conserving water conservation, the very importance of gardening, and then taking those gardening products, the solar cooking on the top right, the demonstration is the apples, coring the apples, and then we did some solar cooking with a little added cinnamon. I do want to say that the community involvement in a sustainability courtyard is imperative to help with that vision as well. Much of what you see, if not everything that you see, is a result of volunteerism and 5 Eagle Scout projects. And the thing I'm probably most proud of, and this takes why we take the learning from the classroom out into the courtyard, is there on the left where you'll see some different colored tiles. That's a 28-foot teaching bench where they were just dead bushes. We pulled those out and with reused materials built a 28-foot teaching bench. I can have my whole classroom out there to give them direct instruction, and then they can go to each of the stations. And so that I'm very proud of the courtyard, and I'm mostly proud because it represents what I consider provident living. These are it represents things that don't cost money. The water barrels I got for $10. Things that can be reused, and it gives them an idea of yes. And many of my students come from they're English language learners. They come from Europe, they come from South America, and they'll tell me, oh yes, we've used water from wells, oh yes, we've done this before, and they're able to, and they certainly, most all garden. And they come and bring that to my students who are from apartments, and then I teach them how to do the 1 bucket sustainability where they can grow their tomato right in the bucket. So that's the courtyard for which I'm very, very proud of, and enables the kids to maintain that. And just this morning, my class was special education students. We went out and watered the garden, and we did our compassing and our GPS outside because they were not going to sit down today. This next slide that you're seeing is looking at a panel. Much of the curriculum that I like from Facing the Future, and this is the one thing I want to say, is opportunity. Facing the Future the curriculum has given me opportunity not only to teach sound curriculum, but has opened doors for me in other like-minded curriculum. And this particular slide is the panel when we were looking at climate change connections and solutions. So we talked about the renewable, non-renewable energies. We did it in a panel kind of fashion, and then we also went outside and tested some of the things that we talked about. But the students had to prepare and know their content, and they had to prep for that. And I just happened on the picture that you're seeing that all 3 administrators came in that day, unbeknownst to me, and what they liked and what they saw were the kinds of higher level questions that were being asked, and the students were looking at core material to provide the answers, and then they did it in a panel situation.
That's great, Sunny. I'm going to just jump in real quick here, and I just wanted to show folks one of the pieces you had said that you were using, which is the Climate Change Connections and Solutions curriculum unit. And this it's been a great one for us to have in our library because it's a free unit. There's the middle school unit that you're looking at there. There's a high school unit as well. And like Naomi was talking about, it looks at climate change from the understanding of what carbon is, why carbon dioxide is a good greenhouse gas, and then kind of stepping through the basics of climate science, and then kind of introducing students to the social, economic, and environmental interconnections of climate change. So it's 2 weeks, 10 different lessons, and looks at energy, looks at impacts of climate on different ecosystems and different human populations, and kind of winds up with asking students to think about how they would create a climate and energy policy going forward for kind of their own little mini Copenhagen or Kyoto negotiation. And Naomi, I ask if you could to lean into your mic a little bit more. I think your
Yes.
sound is trailing off
I'm
there.
sorry.
No, that's
Okay.
okay.
I'm sorry. I was leaning into my screen. I forgot about the mic. All right.
So we're going to shift gears a little bit, and Naomi's going to tell us a little bit about what she's done with service learning and kind of what you've learned along the way with that in your work with your students and incorporating that into your classroom.
All right. I did want to say back on the previous slide, the one with the curriculum, is that the items in that curriculum are also for high school as well. And as I'm looking at the curriculum, not only did we cover our carbon footprint, but in our science classrooms, I have extension cords from the ceiling for the microscopes and other type things, and I've replaced. I turned on my house lights and I put the CF lights in, and the students are able to compare and contrast the energy from a monitoring system on those lights compared to, say, LED lights.
Oh, wow.
All right. Okay. Another component of facing the future is their whole category on service learning. And I want to confess that I was at a national conference. National Science Teachers Association gave a beautiful presentation. At the end, the individual told me that I was not doing service learning, so I have since researched that, and now there is a clear distinction.
Well, Naomi, I appreciate you brought this up earlier, and I think it's a great point to make, because a lot of us as educators think that we are doing service learning, and it's a real challenge to actually kind of do service learning by the book. So I'm curious, if you wanted to tell us what the kind of before and after difference was for you.
I can. If you'll see, and we go to the next slide on this, the service learning must be meaningful. It has to be curriculum-based, and like project-based learning as well. It has to have some academic skills. It has to connect to the real world, and then the critical part is the reflection of the students. So I think the next slide is an example of some of the characteristics. And some of the service that we have done is absolutely there's a community need. And you have the objectives, and you incorporate this reflection part. They always have to come back. So why are they doing the thing that they're doing? And hopefully they'll see an issue so that they'll never see that issue in the same way. We'll go to the next slide. Remember I said about what defines service, and I mentioned how my courtyard was a result of volunteerism. But nowhere in that was that necessarily service learning. So this is the distinction, and I came back again when I went to the National Green Conference and did the service learning presentation. I did make those distinctions. So we'll go to the next slide. Recently I returned to Ethiopia. It was my 4th trip to Ethiopia, and we had gone 10 years ago. And some of the things that we did 10 years ago as a school were very much service. We had, as you can see in here, but when we came back 10 years later, it was interesting to see that the things that we had done as a service were still in place. But it wasn't service learning, because here we are 10 years later, I didn't have the same students to reflect. But in preparation for that trip, we also went to Uganda. I think that's in the next slide. Yes. My students prepared for the kind of service that they were going to render, but they were not able to deliver it themselves. And it has much to do with the necessity for clean water. And that permeates all of the curriculum, the whole idea of having that real-world relationship with, here we are learning, you learn everything from the periodic table with regards to the elements, but the necessity for everyone to have access to clean water. And this was a simple example that I was able to return back to my students. They're just washing their hands, but they're also washing their hands with soap, which is something that they don't have access to. But the solar on the right, the solar shower, provided the warm water. And then the ABCs were die cuts, and they sang the ABC. My students created those or made those letters to take, and they when you wash your hands, you should wash it for a certain length of time, is kind of the point there. But they also helped work on a small and very simple book that had basic principles, and it was not based on monetary types of things, and it had to do about being clean, and that how the young boy had helped his mother with the water so that he could help bathe the baby. That was a very simple principle, but when applied, had a great impact on the sharing of that story. We'll go one more. We can go to the next slide. Am I still? Okay, here we go. Are there any questions regarding? Okay, let me just say on the tree planting ceremony at the schools, and I want you to look at these uniforms. Is the education slide in there? The one with the power of education. When we first started with this school, and my students on this end, we did jars for change, and they put their change, their 5 cents in to buy a brick. And these students with these orange uniforms, they did not attend school. They didn't have a uniform. In this country, you have to have a uniform. So they received the products of my students' understanding the importance of education, and that became the focus or the issue that had to be addressed. And then they participated. We also participated, but they as well, in the tree planting. Are there any questions? Let me talk to the 8% that are in the arts. It's not related to the slide that you see on the screen, but we were involved in a grant for waste management, and part of that was the textile recycling, and we had a fashion show from the students put on clothing that they purchased from the thrift stores. But we also did a musical on the whole recycle symbol, so that there's much that can be incorporated in the arts with music and movement that have to do with some of these major principles that are in the Facing the Future curriculum.
Great. So Naomi, there's a question. Is this an ongoing relationship that you have with this school, that the students are constantly working in a kind of a service capacity and learning through this relationship?
To answer the question on the Uganda one, this is our initial exposure with the Ugandan school. But in the 10 years I've been at Will Rogers, those 10 years prior to Uganda were focused on Ethiopia. We went in May to celebrate their sustainability celebration. When we first arrived, they did not have access to clean water. In the efforts of many volunteers, they finally had a well. But beyond the well, they had their water directly connected to their hut. They had gardens. They had a learning center. They were using cooperation one with the other. So that was over a 10-year period. So this is, now that they're sustainable, we have discovered a new school in Uganda that we're now starting with, and we started simply with providing uniforms, and now we're doing our focus strictly on education.
And there's another question: how many students have been able to travel to Uganda with this school?
There was not student travel from my school, but there have been a lot of youth that have gone and been involved.
Okay, so the students are working as doing like indirect service with this school. Yeah. Okay. Great. Thanks. So I wanted to pause kind of since we've been talking about sustainability and service, and there's another question I wanted to ask folks. Just kind of talking about in general what sustainability looks like at your school. So that's going to pop up on your screen here. To get a sense of what people are doing, kind of an idea of what some of the things that Naomi's done at her school, and to get a sense of what you all are doing with your school or organization. Does sustainability look like? Is it reducing? Is it recycling or waste reduction? Is it integrating into curriculum, or is it more at kind of the mission statement level but hasn't been brought down in the classroom yet? And again, you can click multiples on those if you want to. It's helpful for us to get a sense of what's going on out there. So it looks like everybody's answered that is done. So I'm going to go ahead and close this out and share this with all of us. And yeah, it looks like we are kind of all across the board. So it looks like a lot of people have got to the point where it's in their curriculum, but less so with the recycling and waste reduction or the energy reduction especially. I know that's sometimes harder to do. And some schools, it sounds like, have it in their mission statement. Is that something that you've done at Will Rogers, Naomi? Is the word sustainability or those kind of concepts, is that integrated on a school-wide basis?
Well, I think it is because our science classrooms, of course, do the recycling program, so that's very visual. But then you come out into you see the gardens and you see the composting that's going on, and I think branding is my word to saying we are sustainable, therefore we are. I do it with logo. I do it with murals. They see that this is a way of life, and I don't know that my students recognize the word sustainability, but they definitely know about not wasting, because even in my classroom practices, and I believe others do, because I provide the one-sided paper. I go to the district and get the mistakes from the printing shop. And it's also my administration's very supportive of the things that we're closing doors, we're turning off lights. That's outward behaviors. And they bring their coffee grounds for the composter. So they all know to go to one person. Now, for an individual teacher to also do those practices, it just comes over time with being gently reminded. I'm really pleased to see the 100% and the waste reduction, and this is going to go into the last couple of minutes on grant writing. Could you even imagine that you could get some really nice grants from your waste management? I was very surprised that we've been out to the transfer station. This particular grant that you're looking up here, I love storm drains, and this is really what I want to encourage the attendees that are listening, is that look in these unusual places to find funding. This is from our Water Resources Board, and this is a grant from, it's a different school, but it's one that I've worked with, is the whole concept of storm drain and how that is affecting our water resources. And again, that's always been an important consideration of mine. And simply doing a storm drain survey on your campus and what can be taught and learned from our watersheds. And this is in conjunction with making community partners, and this happens to be a partnering school that I work with that has a beautiful garden. And then they also use the media to help promote the thing that they're interested in. That's one thing we do at Will Rogers. We have video media, and we also have our own radio station, which when students and parents come in our drive through to drop kids off, they can tune into our channel. And the staff's very supportive. They'll do the recycling, the green, the textile recycling, the lost and found, all those things that that are of interest on campus, they'll promote that through the media and the radio.
So I'm curious, Naomi, because you touched on a couple of things that I think folks might be interested in. One is just how you do incorporate kind of the multimedia aspect in your own, kind of PR efforts at the school, but also how you've had students take over some of that with the video and also with your radio station. How has that come to be?
That is something that the school itself, I happen to be at a site that is heavily technology-based. We're a Title I school, and with that comes sometimes the technologies to support the learning. So we have those, but even we have those pieces of those tools of technology, but even if you don't, you can still use the Vimeo that's on the technologies that we have now that are computer or web-based. And in the old days, we did the over the audio and video over the television, but we don't do that now. Everything's on the web. Secondly, the radio station has really changed the fervor of the school, because students go out on iPods and they do the interviews, and then they tie that all together on GarageBand, and then you just tune in. They loop the show, so when anywhere within about a quarter mile of the school, you can tune in.
So you have your little micro private radio station.
A private radio station, and that was from a grant. And that's back to the focusing on the grant. Find the small monies, the 2,000s, the 5,000s, and over time you'll build the program that you're looking for, but you also have some of those tools that you need. Like we have the water testing equipment, we have the GPS, we have here's on the storm drain survey. This was the students have their orange on. We went around and counted our storm drains, but that was for that year. But in the previous year, we did the stenciling and the no dumping. And I just wrote another grant on the stenciling because over the summer I discovered that some of the wastewater was going down the storm drain. So I wrote a grant to how we could do a better job at being more proactive so that doesn't happen across the district.
So I'm curious with the storm drain work that you've been doing for a couple of years now. Well, one kind of starting with the grants, and is the kind of terms and the concept of sustainability, is that something that you find is useful to put into the grants? And then kind of the second part is, when you have students involved in this actual work, what's the connection that you then use with this project to link it back to the curriculum that you are required to teach?
Well, okay, that's a very good question. We're looking at earth sciences, and then the physical, and then the life. The water quality testing in life science, nothing is more exciting to see bugs underneath the microscope. So then you're looking at water quality, then you tie that with what goes down in the storm drain, goes to our rivers, and they can draw the water samples. On earth science, then we can tie that with like the watershed and the urban runoff and what have you. So I tie those, and it goes to the connecting with the real world. The kids don't want to go, drink, polluted water, so they have to be specifically educated so they realize where their water comes from. Does that answer the?
Yeah, no, I think that's helpful to hear. The other thing I was curious about is with the grant writing piece. What kind of curricular connections do you feel like you have to make in order to kind of sell this to the folks who are doing the grants?
They always ask for the ones that I write. They're always asking for the standard, the state standard that it ties to, and so I'm always drawing from some of the very same state standards each and every time. But they also want to know how that is connected with in the real world. Much of what the grants out there now are project-based, so they have to address an issue, what the driving question is. And then that goes to either service learning or project-based learning. Is they become agents of change. And for example, in this particular one, my students are going to do the media and the displays for the district spring meeting when all the custodians are coming.
So they'll be educating custodians about where to dump and where not to dump?
They all know, so it's very delicate how we're going to do that, but it's not going to, you need to do this kind of thing. It's more from a positive point of view. It's a very delicate thing to to present that kind of information, but it's important as well.
Mm-hmm.
And they will create all of that media, all of either the radio clips or the media clips.
And this is something that you're doing in a science course, but you're having students involved with multimedia and literacy and language arts. And is that a connection that you feel like is taking time from your other science instruction? Or do you still feel like you can teach the things that you need to get accomplished by the end of the year?
To be honest with you, two answers. The media and the radio are different elective teachers, but I'm on good terms with them. But a grant that I received from Facing the Future provided my classroom with 5 cameras, and that was 4 or 5 years ago. And
Right.
those same cameras are in use. And you put a camera in a child's hand, then they also happen to be in my class. They take the pictures, and then they can take that content, they'll put it on Dropbox or what have you, and then they can use that when they're in their elective. So it's not taking time away, but I think when they're documenting, it's enhancing the very thing that they're doing. I mean, we can put the camera right on the microscope. We've used quite a bit of technology and like probeware, that kind of thing, but it's all tools of science.
And how has it been for you to create those relationships with other teachers to enable the students to work on these projects across the hallway, so to speak? Has that taken time? How's that come about?
Well, for the radio, it was nice because the teacher was new from another school, and he had the idea about the radio, and I said, tell me your idea. And my husband and I both have our amateur radio license and are very much involved in all of that, so it was easy. I took his ideas, and we produced a grant, and he's run with it, so I think we have a good relationship.
I didn't know that about you. You're a ham radio operator?
Yeah, it's all part of the emergency preparedness and sustainability piece, and that's a very important piece. But thank you.
That's why I love these webinars. I learn something every day. So I appreciate you sharing about that, because I think that's one of the challenges that we often face when our work with teachers is talking about how you can, as a science teacher, incorporate this literacy and this multimedia piece, and it sounds like you've been able to do that through partnerships with other teachers in other subject areas.
Well, the one school that I'm writing for is my daughter's school, and he has established partnerships with our local, not only their TV station on their campus, but in our local community TV. And it's the way kids like to present to one another. It's social media, but it's also the YouTube part of social media.
Mm-hmm, right.
I'm looking at my time, and I have like 1:41.
Yeah, so I wanted to go, you've got one more slide here that I think was related to kind of your grant writing work, and so tell us about this project.
It's a walking field trip. We had some dip kits, and we decided we'd make our own. I went to one of like the dollar store, like that, but we got the bags, we put the magnifying glasses in, give the students the binoculars. This happens to be a special class, but they got very, very excited about taking this walking field trip to our local creek, and that generates so much conversation on the things that at their level they had fun at the same time, but they know to pick up trash when they're at the creek, and so that's one of the reasons I particularly enjoyed that.
And for these students, when you get back to the classroom, you'd said earlier that sometimes you're teaching the concept of sustainability without using the word necessarily. So what was the connection you had with this project when you got back to your classroom?
The idea was that we're good stewards, and I like that you use that. We're stewards of our environment. We have to take care of it so that we can see they had butterfly nets, they had petri dishes and little collectors, and they saw all of that, and it just, we are the ones that are going to have to take behaviors, choose those behaviors, and that's how I tie it. I don't really use that word as much as I do. It's the right thing to do, and that's being good stewards.
Mm-hmm. And this is a group of students, if I'm understanding correctly, they almost all of them have IEPs, individual education plans. Yes, so this is, and so tell me, in this context, do you find that just the overall teaching using sustainability as a lens with students, is it different when you're working with students who have IEPs if you're in a special education class or not?
Oh, well, to answer that, humbly speaking, they've given me all the special ed students, and I'm the qualified science teacher, and you have to be highly qualified. That's just a a way of saying that you don't have to co-teach, that they would have the students in another class and then they have a co-teacher. The students come to me and they get science curriculum, a pure science curriculum, and then I have the opportunity to have a support staff and co-teachers. So that is the lens. The sustainability courtyard is the lens. The things that we do with the solar energy education. That is, I could not teach the students that I have in my classes without all of access to that support material. The kids go out with the binoculars. Like today, just today, we did the compasses. We're mapping the Earth's surface, and we did compasses, we did GPS, and then I have some solar, a solar lunchbox that I can recharge the GPSs with. So it's just a natural extension of how we do it. And I like how you said that. It is the lens. They go out and water the trees. They have to pick the garden. They have to rake. They have to, those are just their jobs. And then when we do certain things out in the courtyard, we do it out there underneath. That was the very first slide. We had our solar cooking demonstration outside.
So, Naomi, I wanted to shift gears a little bit and talk about, since you're teaching in a public school in California, do you find that this idea, this lens of sustainability, this concept of stewardship that you're working with your students, is it supported by California's education standards, or do you feel like it's more of a challenge for you to fit this concept into your curriculum?
No, I don't feel that it's a difficult match. The state of California has the new environmental initiative, and they have.
And I may ask you to lean forward again, if you could, please.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I'm talking into the computer instead of and at these national green conferences, California is being used as the measuring stick. No, I don't feel that it's a challenge. Like I said, I feel it supports. And we're also, California has its political environment that supports a lot with the environment, so that's why they want to support that in the education stream as well.
Great.
And the funding, this is the thing, to me this is a litmus test. If the funding for energy education and the funding for water stewardship and the funding for the things that we're talking, just gardens in California, that gives you an indication that they're very supportive. And the curriculum, most every piece that I write has its supporting curriculum tied to the standards.
Great. Okay, so you feel like that's been a fortunately easy one for you to make in the state of California, it sounds like.
Yes.
Great.
Wisconsin as well. I mean, I've looked as I've gone to these national conferences, and I look at what's in the United States, and I think there was a group from Utah, a group from Wisconsin that made their presentations, and I think, and that would be a good one of your questions, is it supported across the United States?
Yeah. With the time that we have left, if folks have questions, you can certainly type them in here if you want, or you can get in touch with me or Naomi offline. I know her contact information is there. And a couple of folks had asked about getting copies of the slides and access to the webinar after it's done. And for everyone who registered, whether or not they are here today, you'll get information about where to access the slides and a recording of the webinar as well. In the time that we have, certainly, I know we said we were going to be done at 3:45, so if folks want to head out, that is certainly fine. I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about a couple things going on at Face in the Future, and then touch base with Naomi before we bid everybody else farewell. Just wanted to remind folks that a lot of stuff that you heard Naomi talking about, you can download the curriculum resources from our website. One other example I wanted to share with folks was she had talked about the stormwater project she was working on, and we have a free curriculum unit called Water Science and Civics that links non-point and point stormwater pollution to those other concepts of understanding what it takes to responsibly manage a body of water and think about clean water and where it comes from and where it goes. And then also on our site we have classroom examples that I'll share with you, and our sustainability lesson finder. So if you're looking for a particular lesson for a particular grade or topic from our homepage, you can access our lesson finder. And then also, if you're interested in finding out about what other teachers are doing, we have a small library of classroom examples, which reminds me, Naomi, we need to get you in there. But you can access that looking by grade level or by subject as well, and that's accessible from our homepage. And then Lastly, we were talking about education standards, and for those of you who are teaching in schools, public schools primarily, that are looking at for education standards correlation, we have that on our website as well, also accessible from our homepage. So you can type in the title of the resource that you're using from Facing the Future, or you can search by saying, I am a middle school science teacher in California teaching 7th grade physical science, and I'm looking to see what lesson plans you have, and it'll pull up a list of those and links on our site where you can access those. And then just the resources we have in general, you can see kind of a snapshot of what we've got there. So we have teacher's guides. We have one based on kind of foundational math and algebra called Real World Math. We have one if you're looking to tie in literacy for either English language learners or just a standard literacy classroom called Making Connections. We have student textbooks for middle school and high school that you see there, and we have curriculum units like Naomi was talking about with the climate change curriculum unit. We also have units for science and social studies in elementary school, kind of all across the board about different subjects and different grade levels as well. And then just for folks who may be interested coming out this coming early spring, we have a full Global Issues and Sustainability textbook and teacher's guide, which is built around the larger concepts of educating students for global competence, which you can learn more about in the book. And like Naomi and I talked about, using sustainability as a lens to understand these global issues and helping prepare students for the kind of larger national push of talking about college and career and citizenship. So having students prepared to think about what academic content is, especially if they're going to be going on to college, and kind of flexing their critical thinking muscles and having them engage in authentic tasks. So, similar versions of some of what Naomi was talking about here, but each of the chapters in the book, which you see coming up here, has links to things that students can actually do as an action project or project-based learning, or as an actual service project if you have the connections to do that also. So this will be coming out in March of next year. And you can stay tuned to our website to learn more about that. And on that end, if you want to join us for the whole series, we have a number of others coming up. They're going to be like the title implies, on the third Thursday of every month. Coming up next month, we will be talking with Amanda Patrick, who also is a peer educator like Naomi here with us at Facing the Future. She works for the U.S. Forest Service at the Shawnee National Forest in southern Illinois. So Amanda will be talking about what she's done to work with non-formal educators as well as other classroom educators around these concepts of sustainability, and talking about how all of us who work in the classroom can also interface better with non-formal educators such as herself. The link down there at the bottom is if you want to register, send this to somebody else, they can sign up for this. And the beauty about webinars is you can tune in live or you can tune in later if you want to. And then lastly, staying connected with us. Those are a couple different ways that you can stay connected with us. You can even stay connected with Will Rogers Middle School. I noticed you guys have a Facebook page as well, Naomi. And then lastly, that's my contact information. I'm Dave at facingthefuture.org. And Naomi's is in the slides as well. And just imparting here, there is a survey at the end. It is really helpful for me. So when you click out of the webinar, you'll be redirected to a survey page. Again, you'll get an email from us about where you can get the slides and how you can access a copy of the archive version of this webinar if you or someone else wants to watch it later. And like we talked about, the resources that Naomi and I talked about are available on our website. Naomi, thank you very much for talking about just a little bit about what you've been doing at your school. Tell us about what you're going to be working on next. What's your next exciting project?
Well, I've got to finish my solar energy one before too much, but my next one I'm going to be working with the storm drains with my daughter's school. But I wanted to make one comment on the 7th generation that happened this summer for me. We had the 7th generation great-great-great-grandson on the top of the monument in the cemetery of the 7 generations prior, and it was amazing to see in such a short time what this 7th generation, going back to my great-great-grandfather.
Well, this is in your own family you did this.
Yeah, it was in my own family, and we were all there, and it was an amazing experience to see that is a very short period of time. 7 generations really is not a very long time.
Yeah, especially if you think about it in the cosmic term of things, that's very true.
But we were able to see, some of the original homes, that kind of thing. And so that's in that photograph, things had not changed. But let's put it maybe in another context. Maybe 7 generations has enormous change in it.
Well, it's interesting to hear you talk about that because I think about what was the concept of sustainability, if that term even existed in our current thinking 7 generations ago. What do you think your ancestors thought of that word?
Well, I know that it wasn't that word, but the gardening and the self-reliance and all of that in this particular family line was very strong. And so it's interesting as we look down the generations, because we have the family history and then that must be in my DNA. Because it's still part of what we do.
That's fun to hear. Well, folks, for those of you who are here, thanks again for listening along, and I hope to see you all next month at this time. We'll be talking to Amanda Patrick. And Naomi, thanks again to you, and best wishes for the rest of the fall and the rest of the school year.
Thank you so much.
All right, thanks, Naomi. I'll be in touch soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.